took a pregnancy test last week and it was negative, but I'm still late. And I think it was just too early to take it. So I'm running low on them. I just keep taking them and they just keep saying negative. So we're just waiting to see what the test says. I'm pregnant. Hey, Max! I'm pregnant.
Hi.
I'm so happy. Hi, guys. So, I'm pregnant. Very exciting. I felt like it was time that I could share. And I also wanted to make this video to share like a first trimester recap, what I'd been experiencing, and more importantly, like what helped. So I'm gonna go through what my main symptoms were, what first trimester was like for me, and what specific, so like what macro things helped for me and what I have found to have made the biggest difference this pregnancy, and then some specific tools, specific things to help with certain symptoms, as well as kind of my unconventional approach to how I view pregnancy and how I approach pregnancy. And then I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about mental health and like what was very helpful for me. Let's get into it. What was my first trimester like? It had positives and negatives. I have not, with both pregnancies, thrown up or had nausea that was so severe that I was vomiting or that I couldn't eat, things like that. A few things that I was experiencing was when I first got pregnant, I pretty much knew immediately because I was a little bit more hungry and I started waking up. In my first pregnancy, and I'm going to get to this in a second, but my first pregnancy, one of my most severe symptoms that I dealt with was insomnia. I was up around 2 to 3 a.m. every night. You guys, I'm not joking. From when I got pregnant to when I delivered, all 9 months. And I would be up for 2 to 3 hours. It would take a very long time and nothing was really helping. I would do salt water. I would usually end up getting a snack, liver support. I mean, you name it. I thought I had tried everything. And I actually figured out a huge piece of that insomnia, why I was waking up at that time, this pregnancy, and I'm gonna share that. So that was one of the biggest kickers why I knew that I was pregnant. From like week 6 to week 10, these were like the main symptoms that I was dealing with. So I noticed the insomnia was coming back, but it wasn't every night. And then I was experiencing like a reflux nausea at night. So I would feel fine during the day. My fatigue wasn't even really that bad. I was a little bit more tired, but it wasn't extreme at all. Starting around 5 o'clock every day around this time, I would start to feel just kind of no food sounded good. It would kind of progress to the point where when I would go to bed around 8:30 and I would lay down, I would get huge pressure in my stomach and that would make me feel like I wanted to vomit. And so it wasn't like, you know, when you're car sick and you feel like nauseous, it was extremely reflux related in my upper abdomen, the pressure. And a few things helped with this and I'll talk more about, but really it was driven by like histamines. And so I started supporting digestion and found some homeopathy that will help, that I'll share. But that was like my main symptom. And I knew it was histamine driven because it would get worse throughout the day and it would get worse at night. And I have a history with some histamine stuff. And so I didn't eat a lot of hot foods. So like, even though I love red meat, I did not have that much red meat at that time. I actually had a lot of seafood, sandwiches, salads, smoothies, eggs. Oh my gosh. Same with my first pregnancy. I craved eggs over easy. I would have like literally 5 to 7 a day because that was what was sounding good. That was what I could tolerate. That was what was palatable to me. Same thing with this one. I would usually have eggs at breakfast and I would usually end up having eggs at dinner. Lots and lots of eggs because it sounded good and it felt good in my body. Anything really hot, no soups, no stews, which it was the dead of winter and I'm usually a pretty seasonal eater. Nothing like that. Red meat, steaks. For that month, I was just like, bleh. I wanted a lot more cooling foods, fresh pickles, fruit, you know, salads, things like that. So I mentioned the like reflux nausea. When it came, it was really bad. Thank God that for that first week, like when it started happening, I'm grateful that I knew enough about it where I was like, this is reflux related and it's histamine related. So I need to like start supporting that to see if it makes it better. And within a couple weeks it did. So even though I was still having it during that month, it got significantly better to the point where I rarely felt like I was actually going to throw up at night anymore. It became a lot more tolerable to eat dinner, because there were nights when I was like, I don't even want to eat dinner. Like I can't even eat. But then when I wouldn't eat dinner, it would make my insomnia worse because my blood sugar would drop. The other thing that hits me in the first trimester, and I had it with my first pregnancy, I did not have it nearly as bad this time, thank God, was just my mental capacity is so low. And it wasn't even necessarily related to fatigue, because sometimes I would feel like not super tired, but to do things felt like such a mental hurdle. Like I was operating at a much lower energetic state that I didn't have the capacity to think about work stuff, to think about even like having big picture conversations with my husband. I had to eventually figure out to tell him, like, don't let me make any big decisions in my first trimester. I can't talk about big plans for our family. You know, we're talking about where we're going to move and blah, blah, blah. I can't talk about this in my first trimester because I literally like couldn't see beyond just the immediate future. I am a lot more prone to seeing things negatively, and feeling like darker in my mind. With my first pregnancy, it was significantly worse. And it was not as bad this time, and I'm very grateful for that. The simple perspective of knowing that it's going to end and it's going to get better and I'm not going to feel this way forever, that was super helpful. We were trying to get pregnant, and so there was so much excitement around it. Like there was so much joy and excitement around before even we got pregnant. I know that that process is not that for everyone, and I just want to say that. Whenever I talk about pregnancy stuff, even sharing this, I was so like, ugh, because I have many friends who have walked through many different experiences, getting pregnant, staying pregnant, postpartum. And so I just want to say that everyone's experience can be different, and I'm aware of that. If it's even hard for you to watch this, don't do it. Like, don't watch this content. Don't watch pregnancy content. Do what you need to protect your heart and to protect your mind. Please. All that to say, that's just a caveat I want to share. I feel like my exposure is so intense. Is my exposure intense? I don't know how to work this camera. There's an exposure button. I don't know. I'm going to be exposed. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to work my camera still. I've had it for like 9 months. So let's go into what helped me the most first trimester. Not just to feel, I think, this time better than I did last pregnancy, but specifically what helped with the symptoms I was having. So the nausea, the reflux, the insomnia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like macro approaches, like some foundational things that I believe made a massive difference. Then I'm going to talk about specific like recipes, drinks, homeopathies that made a really big difference for me. So let's talk a little bit about macro approach. And I just want to take a second to share that I have kind of an unconventional approach to pregnancy. And I think that will inform a little bit about why I do what I do. To me, pregnancy is an extension of my life. I'm a woman. My body was made to do this. And I try to live my life, even when we're not trying to get pregnant. Even at 20, when I got into functional endocrinology, I was really convicted that like focusing on fertility, focusing on a regular cycle, focusing on optimal ovulation, all these things is not just to get pregnant. It's signs of vitality, and it's how I can ensure that I'm taking care of myself and I'm very healthy. So to me, pregnancy doesn't look a ton different as far as what I eat and what I do and how I live than when I'm not pregnant. It's just kind of like an extension of my natural state, my nourished state. There are some things different, obviously, that I'll share, but for the most part, I want to live a life that kind of flows in and out of pregnancy, because ideally I would feel nourished and capable and fertile, and I would feel good in my body, and I would feel like I could support, not just in pregnancy, but with milk production, with the energy for babies, having a baby that doesn't sleep, being able to be resilient to that. That's really important to me. And so when I think about like how I support myself and what I do in my day to day, all of that is geared towards that. And so with that being said, the very first thing, foundational, that I think made a huge difference, that I was still very focused on my first trimester, it was not perfect, let me be very clear, was the foundations of my nourishment, I should say. This is not medical advice. I feel like every time I talk about health stuff, I should say, this is not medical advice. sit with information yourself and get to know your body. For me, a lot of my nourishment looks the same as when I'm not pregnant. Focus heavily on nutrient-dense foods. I focus on lots of vitamin A rich animal foods, lots of egg yolks, lots of full fat raw dairy, organ meats. I take my perfect supplements, multi-organs, every day. I actually increase a little bit when I am pregnant. I have been taking those for years. I cook with organ meats. I'll be honest, first trimester, I am not cooking with organ meats. I'm not doing any of that. I am taking the powder. That's it. And I'm so grateful for that convenience. I am focused on cooking from scratch still and making it as simple as possible. I ate so many sandwiches, so much like sourdough toast with eggs and butter and fruit for like breakfast and dinner. But wherever I could, it was already built into my rhythm, like my approach to nourishment, to just eat local when I can, eat high quality foods, cook from scratch, simple meals, simple meals. That was already built into my rhythm. So even though there were times when I was like, I don't feel like cooking, or I don't feel like red meat, or I don't feel like some of the meals I would normally make, it still felt very natural and gratefully accessible for me to know that I like have a lot of ideas for things I could have on hand that would whip up really easily, that were still nourishing, but took very minimal effort, that I felt like having. It didn't feel like a huge hurdle to feed myself well. And I recognized that a big part of that's probably because I wasn't vomiting. So even though I felt like vomiting for a time being, I was still able to intake as much nourishment as I could. And on this note, there's two things I want to emphasize when it comes to nourishment: minerals and eating enough. Personally, I track my food. Now, as someone with a history of eating disorder, I know this is a touchy subject and it's not for everyone, but I track my food using an app to make sure I am getting enough. I find that if I am not tracking my food on the days when I wasn't, it was way too easy for me to undereat because I was tired, because I was fatigued, because I would start eating and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then all of a sudden I'm undereating, I'm waking up at night hungry, my blood sugar is more dysregulated, I feel more nauseous. Like it was kind of a cycle. To make sure I was getting a lot of protein, at least 100 grams a day, usually more. Honestly, most of the time it was definitely more than that, especially now that I'm in my second trimester, it's definitely more than that. Making sure that I was getting enough food overall, not just protein, but enough food overall. I was getting enough calories in, spaced throughout the day, especially when my appetite was high. So I knew that at dinner time, I couldn't eat that much, and I wasn't going to eat anything after dinner. I just didn't feel like eating like after 5 that much. It was great for me to get eggs and toast down. So I would stack my food. I would have really big breakfasts, and I would make sure I was snacking and I was packing food and I was having good lunch and snacks, because I knew that that was like my time to get nutrients in. And if I had supplements to take, I would take them in the morning. Even if I normally take them at night, I wouldn't do it at night because I did not want to swallow pills at night. It was just not, it was not it for me. And the second thing I want to say is with minerals and hydration. I have a whole video on minerals on YouTube as to like why they're so important. I talk a lot about minerals in my course, The Nourished Mama, which goes into all this. Everything that I do in pregnancy are foundations that I list in that course. It's actually not different. Same reason in pregnancy and postpartum, actually postpartum even more so for certain things. Your body's extending so much energy. You're literally sustaining a life. You're creating life. You're sustaining a life. The mineral demand, the caloric demand, the possible like need to support your liver and to support your gut. It's actually all very similar. And so I am doing the same foundational concepts that I list in my course. And that's how I actually live my life. So I have an entire module on minerals, and I have a YouTube video for you to learn more about it. Why are minerals so important? Because they spark enzymatic reactions. They literally hydrate your cells. One of the easiest ways to feel nauseous, and I would notice a difference in this, I would feel significantly worse on the days when I was very lax with my hydration and my mineral intake. I drink a lot of spring water, which has natural occurring minerals. I would try to do any form of an adrenal cocktail that I could. Anything that sounded good. Some days coconut water sounded good, so I put some salt, some vitamin C in that. Great. Some days, yuck. I would also make another drink that I've been like on a kick with it in the last month, and it's some interleaf aloe vera juice. I pour some boiling water in a cup to melt the salt, so I put like a big heaping scoop of salt, some boiling water to melt it and to kind of just warm up the drink. probably about like half a cup of interleaf aloe vera juice, and a tiny bit, like a couple tablespoons of pure cranberry juice. So like no added, no anything. It's very tart. And I only use a little bit. And that seemed to be like really nice in the mornings, especially in the winter. It was a huge hit of potassium and sodium. Focusing on my potassium and sodium has been huge. It has also been extremely helpful for my insomnia, which is something else. It's a hack I want to get into. I upped my salt. I know this is like everything I'm sharing. People are like, this is like contrary to everything normal advice for pregnancy. Yeah, pretty much. I'm sharing what has helped me. If you want to learn more about like why these recommendations, there's actually a ton of resources. Look into Lily Nichols' work, Real Food for Pregnancy. My course students have lots of resources in my course. You can watch my YouTube video. You can look into the work of Morley Robbins and the root cause protocol. Minerals are so important, and we use a lot of salt in pregnancy. We need salt balanced with other minerals because we are increasing our fluid, as well as salt is super helpful for histamines. So like if you have high histamines, that's driving that reflux, that nausea, for staying hydrated. So like the first thing I would do in the morning is I would put salt under my tongue and then drink a cup of water immediately. Salt is like, it's been my thing since honestly the end of last pregnancy and postpartum. When I would wake up nursing my daughter, I would have salt. I actually literally have a little jar of salt in my room because if I wake up and I feel like insomnia-y and like that cortisol is rising, I put some salt under my tongue and I drink some water, and it helps take the edge off because it can lower cortisol. So there's just so many beautiful uses for salt. Making sure that it's balanced with your other minerals, particularly potassium, is very important. I also test my minerals every 6 months, and in pregnancy every trimester using an HTMA. So that's something I've been doing for years, honestly, for like 5 years now. I test mine, I test my family's, and it just helps me to know how to support my body. And so that's also another thing is I know I need a lot of it. Like I'm low in it. And so I know I need to support my body in this way, which leads me into a specific hack that it helps. Something I noticed with my insomnia, something that really helped was having either a cup of coconut water with salt within an hour before bed, or having my aloe and cranberry juice before bed. That immediately helped it from not being every night to just maybe like a couple times a week. It was super helpful for me just staying hydrated and being able to sustain like a 7-hour stretch of sleep, which anyone that has struggled with insomnia knows is blessed. It's amazing when you actually can stay asleep for 7 hours. Another foundational thing that I want to mention, this is huge, huge. I could have listed it first. My circadian rhythm and my light health. I'm very intentional about blocking artificial light. Have my red, like dorky looking like red glasses on when I work on a computer during the day, and every day once the sun goes down. We don't use artificial light during the day. And then at night I try to use candles, or I try to use like very dim light. And then during the day, I'm very intentional about getting outside, especially in the morning light. Just getting outside as much as possible. Essentially trying to focus on my days operating with the rhythm of the sun. Oh my gosh, wow. The days that I was feeling poor in my first trimester, there were some days when I would just be like, ugh, or it was like raining and I didn't want to go outside. But contrast that to some of the days when I was feeling poor and it was nice, like it was sunny, and I would sit outside. Like I was like a little cat. I would sit outside. I lift my belly. I would lift my shirt up so that my belly was to the sun, so that my belly was getting sun and I was getting sun, and I would just lay there. I would be out there for hours. Like I would just live out there. I would bring our food out. I'd bring toys out for her. We'd hang out. I'd read to her out there. I don't care. I was like, I just need to be outside. Those days were so much better. Like I can't even express how much better I felt mentally, how much better I felt physically. My symptoms were way more manageable on those days. And it's just a huge priority for me now. Artificial light's a pretty relatively new invention. And historically, for hundreds of years, you know, the biological match for our body would be to operate in outdoor rhythms. You know, it would be to like live outside, live by the sun. That's very intuitive, and to adapt to that. And of course, modern life, like we're not gonna do that perfectly at all. But prioritizing that has been huge, like huge, 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 huge. I can't even emphasize it enough. The other hack that was super helpful for me, I should have listed it first because it's been the most helpful. And I'm gonna share who told me about it. Amanda Montalvo, she runs the podcast, You Menstrual? and she also has a course. I bought this course, my first entry into interpreting HTMAs. This is when I was still kind of seeing clients and I wanted to use it with clients. And she talks all about minerals. So she was the person that recommended to me personally that this specific homeopathic remedy called histaminum, I want to say it, I'm going to write it, histaminum hydrochloricum. I think that's what it's called. I will list it though. Taking that, and there's different ways to take it. So from what I understand and what I was told was that for this specific remedy, it's better to take it consistently daily to help your body like over time modulate those histamine releases. Even though like still I do that, but I even found that even in the moment, like when I would take it at night, when I would take my nighttime dose of it, like the 5 pellets laying down, I would immediately, like within minutes, release a burp. Is that TMI? And immediately the pressure I would feel of like, I'm gonna vomit, that pressure would dissipate. So it wouldn't go, like it wouldn't disappear, but I no longer felt like I was going to vomit. And that was amazing because what was so hard about it was when I was trying to go to bed because I was tired and it would keep me up for like an hour and 2 hours. And then if I had the insomnia, it was like I was, there was like a whole bunch of sleep disturbances. So it allowed me to it dissipated enough so that I could fall asleep really quickly. And the next hack I mentioned kind of with minerals, but I keep salt on hand a lot. Salt on salt on salt. I made a drink. I stopped drinking it when I was filming because the blueberries were getting in my teeth. But some raw milk, cottage cheese, some whole food vitamin C powder, colostrum, frozen blueberries, and a good amount of salt in here. I put salt in my smoothies. I cook with a lot of salt. Like I said, I put it under my tongue first thing in the morning with water. I also do that a couple times throughout the day. I make sure I'm getting enough potassium to balance it, for sure. All minerals need to work in balance, but I personally don't fear salt, and I found salt to be very helpful. The next hack that I found really helpful was digestive enzymes. And for me, it was really helpful to take ones that did not have HCl in them. So normally I have ones that have HCl in them, which is like your stomach acid. But because I was having that reflux, that like histamine related reflux, that my acid was actually, I was like dumping more acid in my stomach, those made me feel so terrible. And I realized that a couple days in of taking my normal enzymes, I was like, I feel terrible after every meal I was feeling it. And then I realized, I think the HCl is bothering me, and I switched to ones that didn't. And I can link the ones that I use below. I switched to ones that didn't, and immediately I stopped feeling that way after the meals, but I felt better. It definitely helped me to feel like I could eat more, that I could digest a little bit better. It was helping with my appetite. So that was also very helpful for me. The last thing I want to talk about, which I kind of already mentioned, mental health. And I will tell you what, it has been very interesting because this is my first time being pregnant with a toddler. My first pregnancy, it was just me. If I wanted to lay in bed all day, I could lay in bed all day. Part of it has been really good for me, I will say, because you're kind of more distracted in a good way. You don't have time to just like ruminate in what you're thinking. And my toddler can't be inside all day. Like, she cannot. So it forces me to go outside, to get outside, to plan picnics, to do things that I knew would make me feel better. But if it was just me, I probably would end up not doing myself. And the next thing I will say that was super helpful for me, this doesn't have to do with toddler, but more my mental health in the first trimester, because like I said, I just feel like not myself. I found out I was pregnant, and then we all got sick, and then my daughter, after that virus, it was a pretty bad virus, out of nowhere, got like a post-viral batch of eczema that we had never dealt with that before. And it spread and and it was pretty gnarly, bad, painful for her. It was so sad for like almost 2 months. So basically like a lot of when I was feeling terrible, we were dealing with that. And that was also affecting our sleep because it was waking her up and she was in pain. And I was trying to figure out how to support her gut, what was going on with her immune system. Thank God it is like basically almost gone now. She's not having issues with sleep. Her inflammation seems way down. She's eating normal, like thank God. But for that 2-month period while being in my first trimester and then dealing with that, I noticed my mental health like really spiraling because instead of being able to approach this and be like, okay, we're gonna help her, we're gonna do this, I would just spiral. Like it was like I was having thoughts that were not even rational, and I just had to learn, like, I had this expectation of how this pregnancy would go and how I would feel in this pregnancy and what it would look like and where we would be, like where we would be living, like all these things. And when I would focus on all the ways that it wasn't what I expected, I would get really down. and really upset, instead of seeing all the ways that it was really beautiful and really good and more positive than the last one, or like what goodness there was to see in this particular season. It was like I couldn't see it. And being surrounded with people who would remind me of God's faithfulness, of God's goodness, of the positive, of like, but look how far she's come, and like, look at how far you guys have come, like that knew us and had been walking with us, my husband doing this, that was, oh, so important. And above all, the greatest support, like the greatest help of anything, all the hacks, the homeopathy, anything, the greatest thing that I had this first trimester that got me through was my husband. He is an incredible man, supportive, so empathetic, wants nothing more than to like be there for me, to support me, doing dishes every night, asking me how he can help. He works from home, which I'm so grateful for. Even just knowing he was here was like such a comfort for me. And even that, like reminding myself during my first trimester, wow, I'm so grateful to be in this position. Like I am so grateful to have this support, because I have friends whose husbands are deployed. I have friends whose husbands are gone for most of the day and they're pregnant with a toddler, first trimester, and just realizing like, it's not cheesy to orient your mind. You're not ignoring the negative, to orient your mind towards the goodness of what you have. It doesn't mean I ignored what I was struggling with or what my daughter was going through, or all like the grief I was feeling about, oh, I thought we would be here. Like I thought that this would happen. It's not ignoring that. It's just like I could see a direct influence on how I thought about this pregnancy, how I thought about my family, and how I physically felt on the days when I either had a conversation with a friend, or I had my quiet time, or I had someone or something to orient my mind on goodness. And I feel like that's a lesson I've had to learn the hard way, just to be honest, because my brain does not naturally go there. I know it seems like I do maybe in videos because I talk about it a lot, but I talk about it a lot because I do not naturally do that. And it's something it's like I'm learning with every season of my life the value of being able to renew and train your mind. And so for me, that was so important this pregnancy. It really would change day to day even how I saw my life. All that to say, that was my first trimester. That was way longer than it was supposed to be. I'm gonna have to edit this. Please let me know in the comments what pregnancy content you want to see, because I'm super excited for it. I'm very excited. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next video.